What's up, everybody? Today I wanted to do a quick video on the idea of whether or not religion is good or bad for society. Specifically, we're going to be going over the ideas of whether or not it has impacted the influence of science or hindered the growth of science, as some would say. And then we're also going to be looking at whether or not religion has been the major cause and conflict of war. Has violence and all of the things in the world been a cause by religion specifically? So, first we're going to address that second part about the religious wars and religious violence. The first point that is brought up in a lot of these discussions is a couple historians that wrote a book specifically about this topic called The Encyclopedia of War. And this book specifically goes over all of the wars that have been recorded in the history of mankind. So, out of the recorded wars that we do have, that we can show happened, only about 6.87%, so practically just a little under 7%, has been caused by war. So, that's a surprisingly low number when we see many atheistic figures try to say that religion has caused all of this violence and war and atrocities in this world. But this is nothing but a New Age atheistic myth that has been put forth. We see this expounded by atheistic figures like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and the late Christopher Hitchens. This is a huge thing that we see in the popular level today, which no historian accepts as true. For this, I would highly recommend a couple sources for this. Obviously, sources such as Tim O'Neill, of the History for Atheists. This is put under myth number 12, where his entire vlog is about myths created by other atheists online, and he addresses them on his vlogs there using historical consensus and research in that practical field. So I highly suggest that resource. But then I would also recommend Tom Holland and his sources that he puts forth in his book Dominion and other things that he's put forth over the years, podcasts and such of that like. So those are two ones. I like to give out some of the atheistic sources because I know how some people are very lenient on some of the Christian sources. But there's great Christian sources for this too. Some very good historians that have talked about this. But that's the first really big myth about how war has been nothing but a religious construct, or caused by mainly religious constructs. And this is just simply untrue. We don't have any evidence to support that. As I said, 6.87% is the number given that is accepted by, just about any historian that I have went forth into. So that's a pretty good thing. We can see that that's like, and this is another interesting point. Is my channel is mainly focused on a lot of the Christian concepts and Christian argumentations as Christianity, the cause of much war and violence in this world. And obviously the number for Christianity would be even lower than that 6.87% because that's all religion in that 6.87% deal there. So that's what makes this very, very interesting. I don't have the number exactly, specifically what would be caused by Christianity alone, but that's something I can look into. And if anybody is listening and has a source on that, I highly recommend sending that to me and I can take a look at that also. But let's move on to the second part now. The idea about science. This is also addressed on Tim O'Neill's vlog. I believe in a couple spots, because I want to say he has one on Hypatia, and then other just more generalized ones in that sense. So when looking at these, we can see that the people that try to say that science was hindered by religion, and that the religious figures were always anti-science, and it was these religious figures that went against the sciences, and they killed all of the scientists. This is, again, just another online, internet atheistic line of thinking that has not been supported by any data. Because, again, when we look at it objectively, we can see that all of the first scientists were actually Christian. Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler. We see Galileo and Copernicus. So there's so many examples. Even the biggest one that I continue to see today is obviously the Big Bang, and how some people think that this contradicts belief in God. However, this was theorized by a Catholic, George Lemaitre. So this is a very interesting thing here. People have to realize that the sciences was created by the Christians in this type of way. The way that we all think of science today, with empirical and observable testing of things, right? These kinds of ideas. I won't get into all of the nitty-gritty details of some of the names I mentioned, because I know there's a lot of myths surrounding those names that I gave. Guys like Galileo and Copernicus. Bruno is another example, which is also mentioned in the vlogs that I've mentioned with Tim O'Neill's website, History for Atheists. Again, I cannot recommend that enough for people wanting to look deeper into this. I actually have an entire video on Galileo. Well, it's a 6 or 7 minute video. It's made in a short form to be able to explain this in a short, detailed way. If someone would like to hear the details of what actually happened to Galileo, I highly suggest looking onto my channel and Tim O'Neill's website to see the deeper things that actually happened in real history. So, this is all from what we call a conflict thesis created by atheists in the 18th and 19th century. And these atheistic figures were attempting to try to show that religion and science have been in conflict for a very long time, and the religion had been holding it back. But this was just a myth created by these atheistic figures, these Protestant versioned atheists, as Tom Holland would say, wanting to take the new light to the new world, as they would try to say. But again, there's just no truth to it. We can see specifically that the conflict thesis has been rejected by practically every single historian that we see, because there's just it's a really difficult thing to come into. There's really no reason that someone could even remotely come to believe in that thesis, simply because of how flawed it truly is. I can break a couple of these smaller ones down, just to go into a couple of the details so people can kind of see more of what I'm getting at here. This was really, I want to say it was the Edward Gibbon who really got this myth really started, that many people accept today. And this goes into the idea that the Christians burned down the Library of Alexandria. I also have a video on that if anybody is interested. But again, this is just nothing but a mere myth. We do not have any type of evidence to support that whatsoever. So, we can see that this is just pure nonsense that's been spouted out by so many of these atheistic figures, and whatnot. Again, I have another full video on that, so I don't want to repeat a lot of the same exact things I have went over in that specific video. But I can go over some other things to detail what I mean by some of these other things here. So, the basic thing that we can see from all of these things combined is that the idea that science was hindered by religion is a very awful and bad claim that has not been supported. But actually, we can even make a more positive claim in saying that, well, it was actually not only was Christianity or religion not hindering science, but it's the reason why science itself got going in the first place. So the reason science is what it is today is not because of, some fun secular atheistic figures, but a lot of it was because of Christians themselves. As I've said, the four names I've mentioned, these guys were all devout Christians trying to understand God's world. And these guys, this goes back all the way to the days of Augustine. And some people can say, well, Augustine was looking at this very dogmatically, but that's a different point that we can definitely approach. But that's beyond the point of what I'm getting at. Augustine basically argued that God has given us two books, and through these two books, we can know truth. The two books is obviously divine revelation, which is the Bible, in his view, but then God has also given us a different type of revelation through nature, meaning a human being could study God through the Bible, or the person could study God through nature and still come to know that He exists. So, let me know what you guys think down below. Like and subscribe for more content like this.